Okay, so let's see if we're live. Welcome to Faith Vocals. My name is Faith. Had a bit of a coughing spasm just before we got started, so hopefully that doesn't interfere with my opening here. I see Mr. Man already in the chat. Pog, good to see you. And today is a bit of a challenge today. I've been going through the Bible bit by bit, still in the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible. And had a great segment last stream going through Genesis chapter 18. This is a segment where Abraham, I finally get to call him by the name I know him by, Abraham. He's been going by Abram since the beginning of the series we've been doing. I'm Pat, by the way. Okay, great, Pat. Thank you very much. Do you prefer if I call you by the username that you're using or the one that I've known you by? I do want to be aware of your privacy, that kind of thing, if there's a reason that you've changed your username on YouTube. So want to make sure that I'm careful about that if you want to be. So let's see, at the beginning of this chapter, let me go ahead and pull up. Okay, great. Thank you, Patrick. Let me go ahead and pull up the passage that we were looking at last week. In this passage, God had a conversation with Abraham, and I get them mixed up now that I've got to switch them over, but God had a conversation with Abraham in the previous chapter, and then in the passage that we saw not last week, I had the week off last week, 2 weeks ago, God paid Abraham a visit, God and two men. So there were 3 men there, and Abraham apparently recognized one of them as the Lord. They had a get together at Abraham's tent. Abraham served them dinner, had some fresh baked cakes or bread made for God and the other men there, prepared a calf, had a great dinner there, and during that time God promised Abraham and Sarah, Abraham's wife, that she was going to have a son for Abraham in a year, which she was, I think at this time, 89 years old. Yeah, because Abraham would have been 99 years old. She was 10 years younger than him. So imagine having a woman having a baby at 89 years old. And of course, this was ludicrous to Sarah too. We see that she laughed to herself, saying, "After I am worn out, shall I have pleasure? Will I be able to bear this child?" But the Lord said, definitely he was going to follow through with his promise and give her a child, even though she would be 90 years old at the time this would happen. This is something that God set up specifically to make a miracle in the life of Abraham and Sarah. So we covered that last week. Now we're starting out here in Genesis 18, verse 6. And in this segment, the dinner is over. God has said what he wanted to Abraham, and I'm sure there was a lot more that happened there than we see, because as I pointed out in the last segment, Abraham was able to instruct Sarah to make the bread, the cakes, and she was able to instruct a servant to prepare the calf that they wound up eating. So this was a lengthy process of preparation, and Abraham was available to be present with God and to serve him, to be like a servant and the host to be hospitable to God at this dinner. So I imagine that there's probably more conversation in this than this story has written down. And one of those things about the Bible, maybe when I get to heaven, I'll be able to say, would you guys be willing to hash out what it was you talked about that's not in the Bible? Because there certainly was enough time to have a good conversation about that someday when I get to heaven. But now we have we see that the men set out from there, and I think it calls them men because that is the appearance they come in. They look like men, but we know that one of these is the Lord, I believe that the other two are going to be the angels that are going to be mentioned in the next chapter. So I don't know that these are human beings. In fact, I'm pretty convinced that one of them, well, I've explained about what's called the theophany, the idea that Jesus, who became a man, he took on humanity later on in history, might have been the part of the Trinity who was shown here. So he would be technically a man, even though not being born yet. God is timeless, which means God is outside of the timeline, outside of chronology. So I could see Jesus being able to be as a man even before he received his human form, because he's God. The Bible says that everything that was created by him. He pre-exists everything as God, even though he took on his humanity at some point during our history. So it says, the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom. So the I'm wondering about the topography of the area. I know Sodom is near what is now known as the Dead Sea. The lowest point on the land, as far as I understand, if I'm not mistaken. So the land curves down to this point where water has pooled. Water has come to the lowest point that it can reach, and there's no real way out for the water. So that's an explanation for why the Dead Sea is so salty, has such a salty consistency. If you visit Israel, then a lot of people like to go to the Dead Sea. The salt consistency of the water is said to have health benefits, but also I understand it's fun to try to float on the Dead Sea, and there's so much salt in the water that the water is denser there than, say, in the ocean. And so people tend to float higher on the Dead Sea than they ordinarily would. I have been to Israel before. Unfortunately, I was not able to go to swim around in the Dead Sea, but I did hear the instructions. They say that when you want to, I believe when you go to the Dead Sea, if you want to go out there and swim, you want to make sure that you don't have, say, any watches on your wrist or anything that you don't want to corrode, because there is so much salt. If that gets on any metal or any jewelry, it's going to corrode. You want to wash out your swimsuit as soon as you get back from the Dead Sea, because if that salt lingers on your swimsuit, it's going to get brittle, and your swimsuit is going to, I don't know if it will fall apart immediately, but it will not be useful in the future. So, that is an explanation for why the Dead Sea is so salty. It was a low point of land. I think also the story that we're about to see would have some bearing on that. So I would expect this story that we're about to cover to be the explanation for why the Dead Sea started to be salty. And then, of course, erosion and all the minerals flowing into the area would also explain why it is as salty as it is today. But it says they looked down towards Sodom, so that's what I'm focusing on here. Abraham would have been in an area that's elevated over the region of Sodom, at least in terms of topography. I think the area that Abraham lived in was called Hebron, and I don't have any maps handy to see how far away it was. I wouldn't know from experience whether you can see the Dead Sea from Hebron, but it's clear that the intent of these men is in that direction. At face value, it looks like you might be able to see Sodom from where they were, but at the very least they were looking to head in that direction. So it says, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. He's a good host. He's going to make sure they start off well and have everything they need for their journey. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Seeing that Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. So God's kind of calling out, he has the option to keep something from Abraham. But he's made Abraham a promise. Abraham has been honored in God's esteem. God sees Abraham favorably. That's going to be a phrase that's going to be important in a bit for somebody else. But because God sees Abraham favorably, he's willing to give him some information that he might not otherwise have given Abraham. So he continues, "For I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice." And this is interesting too, because at this time Abraham has one child, and that would be Ishmael. That would be the son that he has by his concubine Hagar. And we've seen that in previous streams, that Abraham's wife Sarai, her name was Sarai at the time, was saying, "Abraham, I can't bear children. If you're going to have the son that God promised you, you better take a concubine. You better have Hagar give you a child," which is what he did. And then in Genesis 17, which is the chapter before the one we're looking at, God said to Abraham, "No, Ishmael is going to be a great nation because of you." God is blessing Abraham, and so he does allow Ishmael also to have his own offspring, to have his own nations under him, who to have his own honor that way for Abraham's sake. But God says, he says, "I'm going to give you another son, and it will be by your wife Sarai. She seems barren now. She is barren now. She has not given you a son, but the plan is for Sarai to give you a son." And in chapter 17, that's where Sarai took on the name Sarah, and Abram took on the name Abraham, because God was promising, "No, I've got another son for you. It's going to come through Sarah, and he's the one through whom you're going to be blessed. All the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him." And this ties back to the son that God has promised Abraham, who is coming. So now Abraham is going to have children. He's already got the son Ishmael. He's going to have another son. And God's chosen Abraham because he knows Abraham will command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord. He's going to teach his children how to honor God in their lives, how to do righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring Abraham what he has promised him. So what is this big secret that God is going to reveal to Abraham? Then the Lord said, "Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know." So this is kind of a unusual wording. I'm going to check the footnote here. So apparently the way it's written in Hebrew, he's going to see whether they have made a complete end. So whether they have fully committed all of the sin that has been said of them. Now, they do have a history of this, so I do want to jump back a bit and see a little bit of what we've already seen hinted about Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 13 for one. So this was right after Abram, at this point, entered the land that God had promised him. And he had so many flocks, and his nephew Lot had so many flocks, that the land could not support them. So they had to split off, and Abraham said to Lot, "You choose wherever you want to go, and I'll choose the opposite direction. You go north, I'll go south. You go east, I'll go west." And Lot said, "Well, the land around Sodom looks pretty good." Which kind of indicates, I was talking about the saltiness of the Dead Sea. That implies that the Dead Sea was more of a freshwater sea at that time, or else all the salt would have gotten in the land. It would not have been good for keeping flocks of sheep, that kind of thing, alive. There would not be a lot of grass for them to eat. So he saw the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar, which is going to be an important city in a moment. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all of the Jordan Valley, and Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. So even at this point, when Lot moved into the region of Sodom, which was probably more than 13 years before the section that we're looking at, definitely, even when Lot moved into this region, Sodom already had the reputation of being a wicked city. So we're going to see the next chapter. That was the one where the kings of several nations came and fought against Sodom and Gomorrah and some other cities in the area, including Zoar. These kings conquered Sodom, Gomorrah, and Lot, of course, was living there. So Lot was one of the captured people. So Abram at this time, went to rescue his nephew Lot. And the Lord gave Abram victory. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons, so give me the people who are part of the city. Don't take them prisoner. Let me go ahead and have those. But take the goods for yourself. You can have all of the spoil that has come from this battle. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. I have made God a promise that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten and the share of the men who went with me. So let Ner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share. These were friends of Abram. And he's saying, I'm not going to take anything from you. I don't want you to get credit for what God has blessed me with. Now, if my friends want spoils, then they can get spoils. But I've made a commitment to God. I'm not taking anything from you because I'm not letting you get credit. And I think that's because Abraham knew of the wicked reputation of these cities and didn't want anything to do with it. So now we're in Genesis chapter 18. We'll scroll down to where I was here. Let's see. We want to be here. So the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. And I checked over this word in Hebrew really quickly. It carries the idea of multiplying. Like there's a great number of people outcrying against Sodom and Gomorrah. There are more and more outcries against Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's not just that these cities are doing things that God doesn't like, but also these cities are doing things that are harming the people around them. Their sin is very grave. There's this word grave. I actually named my dog with this word in mind. I'll go ahead and have a look at that. So the word that we were looking at before, great, the idea of multiplying, this is the root word for that, rabab. And now we're looking at the word grave, kabad. And later on in the Bible, there is a baby who is born when there is a battle and Israel comes out the worse for this, and the Ark of the Lord, which is a symbol of God's protection over Israel, is taken away to another nation. At the time of this baby's birth, the mother was dying, and she heard that the Ark of the Lord had been taken away, and so she says, the glory of the Lord has departed from Israel, and she names her baby Ichabod, which basically means the glory has departed. There is no glory. So that's the same idea here, kabad, glory, but it also carries a sense of heaviness, of weightiness, of burden. So I'll go in here and back up what I'm saying here. To be heavy, weighty, grievous, hard, honorable, glorious. So it can either be positive or negative. For something to be weighty means that it's significant, it has honor, but also it could also be burdensome. And so that is the sense that we have for that is not the back button, Faith. That is the sense that we have for the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. The sin has become heavy, has become burdensome, oppressive. So apparently the people around these cities have been oppressed by the sin of these cities. So God says, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether, whether they have made a complete end, according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know, which makes sense because the Bible tells us that God is omniscient. He knows everything. So it's interesting then that God says he will go down. Doesn't God already know? the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I believe God does know the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. So why would God take time away from heaven to go and see Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, interestingly, he's having a conversation with Abraham. This has been an opportunity God has taken to spend time with Abraham. Abraham has served God, has been hospitable towards God, and God has been able to bless Abraham with confirmation. Abraham already knew this. I think Sarah might have been finding out for the first time that the promise was that Sarah would have a child for Abraham. And that's the desire of both of their hearts. Sarah had given up on it. Abraham had given up on it. When God says that they're going to have a child, their first reaction, both of them, is to laugh, because it just seems so impossible. Abraham is 99 years old. Abraham is 89 years old at this point. And yet God intends to further this promise. So God has taken the opportunity to visit with Abraham, and now he had the choice whether or not he was going to tell Abraham about Sodom and Gomorrah. God could have just struck Sodom and Gomorrah down for their sin, which God would know already, being omniscient, that Sodom and Gomorrah had. So God has chosen to reveal to Abraham that Sodom and Gomorrah are going to come under judgment. So we move on a bit. So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. Abraham isn't just walking away with this knowledge. Abraham is still there with the Lord. Then Abraham drew near. So he wants to continue the conversation, it looks like. Abraham is kind of claiming God's attention. I look at the scene and I go, wasn't Abraham already near? Why does Abraham have to draw near? But I think this is the first of the demeanor that we see Abraham having. Abraham has a kind of timid demeanor throughout this conversation. So Abraham could, from wherever he's standing, have the conversation he's about to have with God, but instead he kind of draws close and makes it more personal. So we'll see how this conversation goes. Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Is that really your character, God? That I know this city is wicked, but surely there are some good people in there. Are you going to destroy this city? Abraham knows the outcry. I'm looking at this and I'm not even seeing God saying that he's going to judge the city. And yet Abraham has this sense. Abraham knows the great outcry against this city. Oh, if God knows what happens down there, he must judge it. So Abraham is taking the opportunity to say, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? And I'm sure he's thinking about his nephew Lot, who lives in the city of Sodom. Lot is righteous. Abraham has spent time with Lot, has been involved in raising Lot, just like Abraham is going to raise his children to honor God. Abraham's been raising Lot until they separated. Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city, which kind of tells me the city of Sodom and Gomorrah is pretty large, that Abraham is expecting 50 righteous people to be there. At least 50. Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? So this is interesting, that the way that God answers this question tells us a lot about God's character. Is God a vindictive, judging God? Does God lean closer to justice, or does he lean closer to mercy? And as I've said many times on this channel, God is the definition of both. When we are looking for perfect justice, the closer our I see a Patrick, am pro. I'm not, unfortunately, I'm not catching on to what the context was. I think I missed when you said it. So I'd be interested in what you were referring to being pro. So God is the definition of justice. The more just the closer to perfect justice we're looking, the closer to God we're looking for that definition. Likewise with mercy, the more perfect the standard of mercy we're looking for, then the closer we are to perfect mercy, the more like God we're looking also. Our standard for justice, for mercy, that standard is going to be God. So he's not going to violate either one. But what does he do in this situation? Is there any room for mercy since God is justice? Is there any room for justice since God is mercy? So the decision that God makes in response to this, if there are 50 righteous people, will you sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50? I didn't realize Abraham was still talking. Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be it from you, shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? So Abraham has a sense of what the right answer would be, and even he's kind of bold enough to scold God if God would come out with the answer that Abraham is not expecting to be just. What is the actual right answer? Is this just some impression that Abraham has, or is this actually the moral answer? And the Lord said, if I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. So if there are even 50 righteous people in that city, even after all of the outcry that people have said, even if God goes and finds that the city is doing the evil that the outcry was against, yet there are 50 righteous people there, God is promising to spare the entire city. Which, I think even here, even at this point, we could stop here and say that's kind of surprising. Because this is the same God who judged Adam and Eve for their sin. Definitely acting in justice there when he was judging the sin of Adam and Eve. God judged the earth when the thoughts of everyone in the earth was evil. I think the word rabab is also used there, where it was saying that evil was great at that time also. So just like in Sodom and Gomorrah, the evil was great. Then when God judged the evil in the earth, that evil was great. And yet here in this case, Abraham is pleading for Sodom and Gomorrah and saying, if there are just 50 righteous people in Sodom, would you spare the city? And God says, yes, I'd spare it if there were 50 righteous people. Abraham answered and said, behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. So Abraham is definitely timid. He realizes he's been kind of presumptuous. And thankfully it's worked in his favor. God has been willing to spare the city if there were 50 people. But I think Abraham's mind is turning. He's thinking about the things he's heard of Sodom, Gomorrah, these two cities, especially Sodom. And he's thinking, I'm not sure, actually, that there might be 50 righteous people in Sodom. That's the impression I'm getting. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? So let's say it were 45 people. Let's say if there were just 5 less people, would that be enough to destroy the city? Are you really going to destroy the city because there are 5 less people? And God said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. Again, Abraham spoke to him and said, suppose 40 are found there. God answered, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. I'll just use their proper pronouns here, because often in the Bible it uses he, and it can get confusing who it is that's speaking. So God answered, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. So Abraham started at 50, and now God has allowed him to talk God down to 10 less. So if there were 10 less people than that 50, if there were 40 people, then God is still going to save the city. Then Abraham said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there. So can we go down another 10? God answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Abraham said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." So Abraham has been able to come down 30 people from 50 to 20. God is willing to save the city if only 20 are found there, less 30 than where they started. So even if there were 20 people in the whole city, God is willing to show mercy despite all of the sin that there's been this outcry about. Then Abraham said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Suppose 10 are found there." God answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." Well, Abram's been thinking, has been calculating, and it seems like he's satisfied. There are probably going to be 10 righteous people in the city of Sodom, right? And the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So we've got God's promise. If there are just 10 righteous people in the city of Sodom is safe. Seems like a pretty good bet. Usually in a large city, you'd expect to find 10 good people in that city. So then we go on to the next chapter. We see how this actually plays out. Okay, so I tend to do my studies about the passage in King James Version, and then I come to the English Standard Version, which is the one I choose for these streams because it's an easier version, I think, to understand for the way that we speak English nowadays. So sometimes I come to these sections and it's a surprise, but it's kind of a good surprise. Let me go ahead and show us the comparison here. In the King James Version, it says, "And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even." So it says there were 2 angels that came. And I say, I think those are the same men who were with God, the messengers who came with God. I think these are the same ones. So the English Standard Version says the 2 angels came to Sodom. So apparently these translators think the same. I'm not sure what the linguistic reason is that they say the 2 angels as opposed to the King James says 2 angels came. But I appreciate feeling backed up here. So the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. So I understand in this time in cultures like this and into the Bible, the gate of the city was where you do business with people, where you make agreements, things like that. So Lot has taken a position in the gate where he's ready to do business with those who would do business with him. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way." So this is very similar, actually, to how Abraham treated God when God and these 2 angels appeared at Abraham's tent. And we're going to see a lot of similar behavior. I tend to assume that Lot doesn't know that these 2 angels are heavenly beings. I tend to assume he thinks they're just men. When I was talking about how Abraham treated God before, I assumed, well, you wouldn't have fresh bread baked. You wouldn't butcher a calf just freshly, just for anybody. You wouldn't be calling just anyone Lord. If they were a stranger, Abraham must know this is God. So I've got a little bit of a conflict in my head. Why does Abraham know it's God in one case and yet Lot's behaving exactly the same way? And we'll see more confirmation of that in a bit. I understand that in Middle Eastern culture, it's very important to be hospitable. Hospitable is a high value. It could well be that even to call someone my lords is perfectly normal, and it's not until God reveals you're going to have a child in a year that Abraham realizes, oh, this is actually God. So I just think this is interesting. This kind of corrects or at least checks me on the way I had thinking. So I had been thinking. I'll look at this further and see from the way that Lot treats these people, does he know they're special or does he think they're just men? So these 2 these two men said, no, we will spend the night in the town square, which also, from what I understand, would have been common at this time. If you're a traveler, you don't have a place to stay. A lot of these cities don't have, like, hotels were not formally invented yet. You might have an inn, but from what I hear, inns could be kind of nasty places to stay. They were really easy places to get robbed at, a place where a lot of seedy business happened. So you might actually prefer to spend the night out in the street. From what I understand, what I've heard as I have heard people speak on biblical subjects like this. So here they're saying, no, thank you for your hospitality. We'll stay in the square. Which, if they're interested in seeing how wicked the city is, that would be in their best interest. I'm getting warm here. I'm going to take my hoodie off. That would be in their best interest to stay in the town square where they're kind of painting a target on themselves. If anyone wants to be wicked to them, then they would be easily found out there. But it says, but he pressed them strongly. So they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. And I just wanted to check this word when I was studying earlier, and sure enough, we've got this word for a feast, banquet, drink. So the kind of feast where you are, the kind of dinner where you are drinking. I don't know what the culture would have been for the time, whether you usually drink hard drinks around the dinner table. At this culture, that's not something that I've been raised with. I do recognize I have been at people's homes where it's a party and people have had alcohol. So I recognize a distinction between some settings where around my dinner table, and this could be because I'm from a Christian family and we tend to be pretty conservative. We just don't see the value of having alcohol. But other people use alcohol in a celebratory way. There does seem to be a distinction between celebrating and having a normal dinner, what kind of beverages you're going to have. So this is the kind of banquet where it's a celebration. Lot has made it a point to celebrate that these men are coming to his house. And interestingly, baking unleavened bread. So again, a quick form of bread that Lot is baking. And similar to the kind of meal that Abraham had for God and these two men also. So these two men are having it nice, they're well fed today. So Lot, I think, understands the nature of the city. Lot is at the gate. He sees two strangers come in and he's going, uh-oh, this is going to be bad. Listen, you guys, he's not going to tell them about the nature of the city, but he's going to try to protect them from what he knows is going to happen with the kind of city that he's living in. And when these men are resisting, no, we'll stay in the square, he's pressing them strongly. He's making his house attractive. No, you come with me. As discreetly as he can, he is very insistent they need to get out of the street. They need to be in his home, not just anywhere else in the city. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house. So definitely a lot of emphasis in this verse about just how totally the city has given themselves over to this kind of behavior. I was looking at this, like I said before, in the King James Version. So the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. So in this version, I think there's a little more wiggle room than the ESV, and that's important to me because I have questions about a couple of the men of the city. I'm not sure that there's a strong distinction It could be that every last man surrounded the house, which, if every last man is surrounding Lot's house, then how many righteous people are there in the city? Lot, whoever he's got inside the house, right? So I'm just curious about this phrase, though, because, and I'll get into this in a moment, if I have any disagreement with this phrase. So this is going back, it goes to the NASB in this tool, or the King James Version. So it's saying all the people from every quarter. Want to check on this. All, the whole, total. So people, nation, people, that kind of idea. And then I guess from every quarter. That would be the important word, I'm guessing. And extremity. So I guess the idea of even coming from the outskirts of the city, from everywhere. So I'll get into why it is that I'm looking so deeply into this in a bit. But definitely there is a ton of emphasis here on how totally the city has given in to this behavior. Every quarter of the city, even out to the outskirts of the city, as soon as they hear that there are 2 new men in the city, this is the way they behave. All the people till the last man surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." So this is a euphemism. Glad that's there. We've seen the euphemism earlier in the book of Genesis, that Adam knew his wife, Eve, and they had a son, Cain. So you kind of get the idea what that euphemism refers to. Sodom does have a reputation for good reason. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly." So I think this says something significant about Lot's character. Because Lot is not out of danger either. Just because he lives in the city, there's no reason for him to be out of danger. And yet he's putting himself between the men that are the target of this attack and the attackers. And I do want to go ahead and say, we live in a culture, I live in a culture in the U.S. where if you see homosexuality in a negative light, the way I understand it, the way I hear it, if you see homosexuality in a negative light, so for a man to know a man, essentially, as this passage puts it, then you're called homophobic, which to me sounds like those people are being called mentally disabled. You have no rational reason for terror, which you must feel at these kind of people. And I don't relate to that, even though I agree with the Bible, with the understanding that God made Adam and Eve. He made a man, and he gave that man a woman to be his companion. That's the way that God arranged humanity. With the understanding that that is how we are made. And God says that relations should be between man and woman. Physical relations should be between man and woman. God is opposed to physical relations between man and women and women. The Bible is clear about that. I do not relate to a sense of terror for people who disagree with me on this. For people who live a lifestyle that the Bible is opposed to. I recognize I come from a particular point of view based on my belief in the Bible, and other people come from a different point of view, and naturally we're going to behave in different ways given where we both start from, which is part of why I have this channel. Part of what I want to do on this channel is talk to people who maybe disagree with me, maybe come from a different point of view. I think it's possible to have a civil conversation around a topic like this. As I look at Lot's reaction here, Let me go ahead and finish this section so that I can speak to it fully. He said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. So, even hearing the words that Lot is saying, my heart breaks. Because I don't think Lot is giving a moral suggestion either. God has... hello, Patrick. I see that E. God has... And I'll be honest, this is a difficult passage to discuss. It is a passage on the way to where I'm going as I'm going through the Bible. This is the next story in the Bible, and I want to be faithful to this Bible that I believe. So, Patrick, if this is a difficult section to listen to, I definitely understand. If you need to take a break, or I'll do my best to be sensitive about how I discuss this, but it is a difficult section, and I'm going to discuss it in the sense that the Bible discusses it. So, I'm listening while playing Boblos. Okay, I'm not familiar with Boblos. So you enjoy the game, and I'll continue talking then. So, Lot is making a suggestion I think is also opposed to the Bible. So this section of the Bible, there is a difference between... Yeah, I saw those caps. I'm glad that you're aware of those, Patrick. Thank you for your sensitivity there. The Bible tells us a lot about humanity's failings. I don't think it's holding back from letting us know that Lot is also a human being who's not perfect, who has his own ways of thinking that God would not be in agreement with. As we look later on in the Bible, when God establishes the law for Israel, he says that physical relationships should be between one man and his wife. Next week, I think I'd like to get into questions about why is God judging Sodom and Gomorrah here, but he has not judged Abraham for his relationship with Hagar when Abraham was already married to Sarah. So that's something I think I'd like to try to tackle next week. I don't know that I'll do it perfectly. I do not come to this channel as an expert. I do come to the Bible as someone who's trying to figure it out also, and someone who is committed to the fact that it's true, and then who's also committed to discussing what the truth is with other people, with the understanding I could be wrong about things. I don't believe the Bible is wrong. However, maybe my own understanding needs to be adjusted in places. So that's what this channel is about. And so I'm covering the details of this story first, and then next week I'd like to get a little bit further into how come Abraham has behaved in a way that in our culture seems strange. And then we have this story where God is definitely judging this city for what they're doing. Lot is making a suggestion that would be opposed to the laws that God gives to the nation of Israel later. God says sexual relationships are between a man and wife. And Lot is saying, here are 2 daughters who have not known any man, and he's basically giving them to the city because he feels responsibility as the host, the one who has shown hospitality to these strangers, to protect them. So, and in the King James, I think, let me go ahead and pull up that version also. It says, in the English Standard Version, do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. In the King, no, it's not the King James, but there's other versions. For instance, New King James Version, that's a more recent version based on the King James, another good one. Since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof. So basically, he's saying, because they've come under my roof, I'm protecting them. So that's his solution. I don't see him judging the city for the same things that I would have against the city. Definitely, I think he takes issue with the fact that they want to mistreat these men. That is the men of the city coming to mistreat the men. He's willing to let them mistreat his daughters, which I think, personally, my reaction is that's terrible also. I think Lot is in a desperate situation because he has taken responsibility for these men. It doesn't look to me like he knows who they are. If he thought they were someone special, if he thought they were heavenly beings, angels, then maybe he would have an understanding they could defend themselves. I think he sees these people as human beings. So then the response of the city, the men of the city, they said, stand back. And they said, this fellow came to sojourn. Basically, Lot is a foreigner who has come to move into the city. So this is a foreigner who is among us. Basically consider it an immigrant. This is an immigrant and he has become the judge. This immigrant has thought that he could judge us. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. So Lot's definitely in danger too. And then they pressed hard against the men, Lot, and drew near to break the door down. So now Lot's pressed against the door from what I understand. This is a bad situation. He is nearly about to be injured. But the men, and the way I understand this, the angels inside the home. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. So these are the men that Lot was trying to rescue. They rescue Lot. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out, groping for the door. So as I look at this situation, I have to agree with the Bible based on my commitment that the Bible is true. I have to agree with the Bible when it says that a man should not have physical relations with a man. But that is not the only issue I see here. The other issue I have is that the entire city is planning to harm these two men. So I'm not going to use the word that is on my mind. Probably if you're watching the video later, or maybe if you're watching the video now, you can fill it in. This is a heinous situation that the whole city would agree to attack these two men in this way. And they have, Lot gives them an option. You can do what you want with my daughters. Let's trade out these men for these women. And the city does not agree to that. They've got an expectation in their minds, and they will not be dissuaded from it. I think there is more here than just the issue of homosexuality, even though I would think that's part of it. This is a difficult evil to discuss. And definitely I can see the outcry of the nations around, the outcry of the cities around. If these are the men who are occupying the city of Sodom, and in this version, every man of the city, can you imagine them doing business with people? Can you imagine them associating with the cities around them? Can you imagine how they treat people they identify as foreigners who don't live in the city of Sodom? So no wonder Abraham saw their reputation for evil even more than a decade before this event. Apparently there was an outcry that people were being harmed in their dealings with the nation of Sodom, and the Bible doesn't tell us in what sense. So these angels strike the men of the city with blindness, and yet the men of the city are still groping for the door. Even then, they're struck blind. You would think that at this point they should be asking themselves, how am I going to get home? No, they're still dedicated to continuing this evil that they had in mind. So then the men said to Lot, the angels that Lot is protecting, said to Lot, have you anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So apparently Lot does have someone in the city. So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law who were to marry his daughters. So as Lot has said to the men of the city, my daughters have known no man, but his daughters are engaged. There are 2 men in the city who are going to marry his daughters, which that's interesting because apparently Lot has been able to do business in the city to the point where his girls have become attracted, or a couple men of the city have become attracted to his girls, to Lot's girls, and Lot has given his permission to become united to this city in marriage through his daughters. So he got up, said to his sons-in-law who were to marry his daughters, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting. So this is why I kind of hesitate about the way that this translation says it, when it says all the people to the last man surrounded the house. It makes more sense to me, translation like the King James Version, where it says all the people from every quarter. I think in Middle Eastern communication, there is a higher tolerance, I think, for higher leeway for, we would call it exaggeration. And I hate to hesitate to this extent. When it says all the people from every quarter. Well, that sounds pretty total also, all the people. So don't I believe that it was all the people? And yet what do I do with these sons-in-law who, wouldn't they have been part of the men? Wouldn't they have been turned blind? Why do they think Lot is jesting? Now, it could be that these sons-in-law are just so hard-hearted that, yes, they were part of the crowd. They were turned blind, but they just can't believe that the city is going to be destroyed. They somehow recovered from it, and now they can't believe the city is going to be destroyed. And this is where I want to be careful. And I often refer to my mom. She has been my teacher, being homeschooled. I rely heavily on her knowledge, but I'm also trying to be aware and sensitive with what I'm looking at here. I believe that the original Hebrew version of the Bible, whatever that says, whatever the original author intends, I believe that God wrote through human beings. So what God intended and put into that version of the Bible, that is accurate. And I believe that these versions of the Bible are very accurate also. However, when I talk about the versions of the Bible, I say I like the King James Version, I like the English Standard, I like the New American Standard Version. Honestly, I think the New King James Version is going to be a good version also. The reason I choose several versions is because of differences in translation. And it's not to say that the translations are wrong or erroneous. It's that when you're translating a word from one language to another, that word may have different senses, and depending on the material you have or the understanding you have, you may be translating a different sense than the original writer intended. So definitely I would be committed to the accuracy of the what's called the autograph, the one that the first writer actually wrote on, and then you have manuscripts which other people copied. I believe that first copy is going to be the accurate understanding of the Bible. I understand that the copies are, if there are like scribal differences between the copies, what may be called errors, a word changed, a letter that's a typo, we have so many manuscripts that we can weed those out, and we can sort out, no, this is the actual version based on looking at all of the copies that we have available. So I believe that what we have is accurate regarding how it's been copied down to us. But these, it's the differences between these versions. I look at the sons-in-law in Sodom, and were they at Lot's door? Were they not? I don't know. I can't say. Based on what I'm seeing in the story here, how people are reacting, I don't know. And so that's the issue to me. And always the final answer I'm going to have when I have an issue like this, where I've got my mind in opposition to the Bible. Where am I going to fall on this? I do not want to elevate my mind above the Bible, because certainly I don't know more than the people who are making the translation know. And even more than that, they don't know more than the people who actually lived in the event, who saw. They don't know more than Lot, than Abraham, than Moses, who would have had the source material or would have been inspired by God with this historical account about how this event happened. So I want to err on the side of the Bible being right over my understanding. But as I run this channel, I also do want to be honest that I don't have everything figured out. And my understanding is not perfect. So I do trip up over a section like this. This doesn't affect my view about the Bible being right, because I do believe that we have accurate copies of the Bible. And I think even the fact that we have various versions of the Bible means that if we want to get a true sense of what the Bible is saying, then that's within our ability. If we're actually seeking what God meant to say in the Bible, then that is possible. And a section like this, whether or not Lot's sons-in-law were at his front door with the rest of the city or not, doesn't matter compared to, okay, as a Christian, what does it mean to be a Christian? Of course, I'm a Christian because I believe that's the way to be right with God. What does it mean to be right with God? What are the core truths of the Bible? Whether or not Lot's sons-in-law were at his front door is not one of those core truths. Certainly it's important. We do see the Bible as being what we call inerrant. So again, like I say, the autograph that was written, the original Hebrew, that would be accurate. That would carry God's idea. I mentioned my mother. I probably better tie that in and make sense of that. She told me that she would err on the side of, if she had to face God in heaven and God were to say, you had my word in front of you and you chose not to believe it. Why did you choose not to believe it? If she had either the choice between that scenario or the scenario of God saying, you had my word in front of you, you believed it as it was written, even though it didn't make sense to you. Why did you choose to believe it, even though it didn't make sense? In the first situation, her justification would be, well, Lord, I didn't think you could make sense to me, and so I thought I was higher. I thought I knew more than you did. And in the second sense, her response would be, Lord, I trusted you could communicate to me, and so I trusted what you were saying. And maybe I got it wrong because I trusted what you were saying, but that's my reason. The first one where you're saying I'm going to elevate my mind above God, that is less honoring to God than the second where you're saying maybe I got it wrong for being simple-minded, for looking at it at face value, but I thought you were smarter than me, and so that's the way I chose to believe it. That actually is the answer that is more honoring to God. So that is the answer I desire to have. Certainly I acknowledge that that here there's there could be a weakness in my understanding of the Bible, and it would be my weakness. It would not be a weakness in the Bible. So that's where I'm going to leave that. This spent much ado about nothing. We're going to move on to the next verse. His sons-in-law think that Lot is joking, and so they do not go with him to leave the city before the Lord destroys it. So as morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." So let's count the people who are leaving the city. Let's not count the angels, because they are not part of the city of Sodom. But we could count the angels if we wanted to. So that would be 2. But then we have Lot, we have his wife, and we have 2 daughters. So of the city of Sodom, there are 4 people who are being rescued from the city of Sodom. Abraham spoke to the Lord. The Lord said, "If there are 10 righteous people in the city, I will save the city." Apparently, there are 4 righteous people in the city. And I'll even call that into question here. But he lingered. So these angels are trying to rescue Lot, and he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand. Lot knows that the city is being destroyed, and he's lingering. Which makes sense. There's at least 2 men in the city who he's apparently gotten so attached to that he's allowed them to marry his daughters. The men seized him, his wife, and his 2 daughters by the hand, and the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And as they brought them out, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away." So this devastation of the city isn't just going... I just caught your message about the chef hat, Patrick. So, escape to the hills lest you be swept away. This devastation is not going to be confined to the city. God is making sure that no one in the city escapes. It is going to be a widespread destruction. And Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords. Behold, your servant has found favor in your sight." I used that phrase before. I want to just spend a moment here. Found favor in your sight. Let's look at this word favor. Earlier in the book of Genesis, I just noticed that the time, there's a couple times before this. Lot says, "Your servant has found favor in your sight." Noah also found favor in the eyes of the Lord, and look what happened. The Lord judged the earth, but Noah was rescued from the judgment of the earth. He got to survive with his family on the ark. So I'm sure that Lot is thinking specifically of this event. Surely he's being rescued from the destruction of the city. He's found favor in the sight of these angels. Also interesting, Abraham in the previous chapter, when he saw the Lord coming with these men, asked them to stop at his house so that he could serve them. He said, "Oh Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant." So I just think that's interesting. Lot's correctly understanding that he's kind of in the same position Noah was, that the Lord is judging the wickedness of the city. But behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life. But I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. So yeah, I guess he's thinking, I can't get there fast enough. God may cause the disaster before I can get to the hills. Behold, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. So he's not pointing at Sodom. There's a city nearby that he's discussing here. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my life will be saved. He, the angel, said to him, "Behold, I grant you this favor also, that I will not overthrow the city of which you have spoken. Escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there." Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. And that's the city that I mentioned would become important later on. We saw that the city of Zoar was one of the ones that the kings had attacked earlier, that Abraham had rescued. It had been on the side of Sodom and Gomorrah. But because of Lot, apparently this city is getting rescued by God, even though it would have fallen under the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar, so apparently Lot and his family are arriving at this little city. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. So this is not a normal, this isn't like a severe thunderstorm. This isn't like a tornado. This isn't like a normal weather occurrence. This is sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley, and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So she was not fast enough. I'm guessing that God is not waiting a moment for this family to get home. And it's not that there's any negligence here. God was waiting for all of them to get to the city, but she hesitated. And she became part of the fate of the city. Which then, to me, that says something about Lot when he's lingering in the city. The fact that his wife has lingered, and this is the fate that's happening to her. Let me look at a different passage here in the New Testament about Lot. I think it's 2 Peter. Okay. So this is talking about God and how God can protect people who are righteous, even though they live in ungodly environments. God knows how to correctly judge between good and evil, I think is basically the sense of the entire passage. I'll go ahead and start in where it's talking about Noah. If he did not spare the ancient world but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness with 7 others, even when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly, if by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes he condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued righteous Lot. So the idea is Peter, who wrote this book, is comparing Noah and Lot. He sees the connection here. God showed favor to Noah, God showed favor to Lot. And he says that Lot is righteous. God rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked. For as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. So I look at this passage, it's coming from the Bible. Peter would have been speaking under what we understand to be the inspiration of God. God is giving Peter the words to say. Certainly God knew the state of Lot's heart as he was fleeing Sodom and Gomorrah. So I understand that this is accurate, I'm going to say. We see Lot lingering in the city. Apparently Lot has become attached to the city, has become attached to at least 2 of the men of the city where they're going to marry Lot's daughters. Lot desires to rescue them. He goes to get his sons-in-law to rescue them. Lot's wife has become attached to the city. I don't think I'll go into the passage about Lot and his daughters tonight. I'll save that for the future, but we can see that his daughters have been badly influenced by the city also. So Lot is, out of the entire family, is the most righteous individual of the family. Arguably, there is one righteous person in Sodom and Gomorrah. And yet, we see that even he became attached. And definitely Peter says that Lot was a righteous man. But even he becomes attached to the city, so that I would suggest he almost had the same judgment his wife did. She became a pillar of salt. So I would say, based on the Bible, this is probably the event that started the Dead Sea being salty. Sodom and Gomorrah are right there on the edge of the Dead Sea. The judgment was to occur to the entire valley where the Dead Sea would be. So I would say that's the event that would have started this. Lot thankfully survives and makes it to Zoar. And we get an interesting look away from Lot. We're turning away from Lot and seeing now in Genesis 19:27 a different perspective. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward the land of the valley, and he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. So that answers my question. You can see Sodom and Gomorrah, where Sodom and Gomorrah were, from where Abraham was around Hebron. So he's looking upon these cities, and he gets his answer. There are not 10 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. Which is meaningful to me, that God is the kind of God who will not sweep away the righteous with the wicked, that God is so just and so merciful that even though Lot and his entire family have become attached to the city, God recognizes that this is a man who fears the Lord. This is someone who Abraham brought up in the way of the Lord. Lot's heart was not attached to the city. He was not one of the men attacking the angels. He was the one man protecting them. Certainly he, like all the rest of us, was fallen, was imperfect, had his own sinful thoughts and affections. So he is not on his own. Lot doesn't have the righteousness to save himself, just like no one we've encountered in Genesis so far has the righteousness to save themselves. And yet God does attribute righteousness to Lot, just like God attributed righteousness to Abraham. I think back in chapter 15, if I'm not mistaken, on when that conversation was. It says Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. It looks like Lot also gets that attribution, which, as I'm looking, why does God call Abraham and Lot righteous? Even though every single human being is sinful. And as a Christian, looking at the Bible as it continues, we're in the Old Testament now, and then there's the New Testament, which starts with what's called the Gospels. Another way to understand that word is the good news. And those 4 books, the Gospels, have the account of Jesus, God the Son, who came to save us from our sins, and us Christians who have accepted Jesus as our Savior. We recognize we're sinful. We cannot save ourselves. We have rebelled against God, just like the people of Sodom. We are just as worthy of judgment as the people of Sodom. Just like Lot in that city was also worthy of that judgment, Lot's wife fell under that judgment because she was not willing to accept the rescue that had been provided for her. She turned back. And yet Lot did accept the rescue. In the next section, it turns out that Lot actually does go to live in the hills because he's afraid that even Zoar will wind up getting judged. So Lot's heart is with God, even though he's imperfect. He has accepted God's salvation for him here, and that is a picture of the salvation that God gives us through Jesus. And those of us who recognize that we are under God's judgment, that we need that salvation, we say we're not righteous enough to save ourselves. Jesus is righteous. Jesus worked to save us. Jesus did what it took to save us. Jesus made the sacrifice to save us. He lived a perfect life, and he sacrificed himself, and he even rose from the dead. And he has the righteousness necessary to save us, and that he offers that to us. Well, now we have, when we accept that from him, we receive that righteousness for ourselves. And I think that's what happened a lot here. When Peter, who was a disciple of Jesus, he worked with Jesus while Jesus was on the earth, and then he went on to be what's called an apostle. Jesus sent his apostles out. The idea of apostle carries the idea of being sent out. Jesus sent them with the good news, the gospel, so that they could share it with the entire world. Peter is recognizing Lot was close enough to an understanding of God and of salvation that Lot gets the righteousness of Jesus Christ. Even though Jesus had not come to earth yet, Jesus did not have humanity yet, Jesus did not die and rise again yet by the time that Lot lived and died, Lot was still looking forward. We've been looking forward to a deliverer for humanity ever since Genesis 3. Let me go ahead and pull that up again. God made a promise to Adam and Eve, the first people who sinned. God said to the woman, to Eve, well, actually, he's speaking to the serpent here, the one who incited Eve to sin. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And we recognize that the sin that Eve committed brought death into the world. So if her offspring sins, then that is worse than a bruise to the heel. That is death to that offspring. So we're waiting for an offspring who does not sin. So far we haven't seen one yet. But it appears that Lot was in that position too, where he was relying on God for God's will for him. Relying on God for, in this case, literally salvation from the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah, and would have been waiting on God for salvation from judgment for his own sin. And the reason I'm connecting that is because Peter does say that Lot was a righteous man, even though we see that Lot is not perfect himself. So he must be getting his righteousness from somewhere else, is what I'm suggesting. So I'm done. We're done with the Bible segment of this stream, and now I can go ahead and play Raft. So just a second while I get that set up here. We're going to tell you what, I'll put on the full screen cam for just a moment while I adjust the music. Guess we can turn on the audio here, and I'm going to make sure that okay, looks like you can hear it. You should be able to hear it. And we're in the game. We're going to pull up the screen as soon as I turn off the settings. Game scene, there we go. So here we are. Oh, I did not mean to eat that fish, but that's fine. That is the radio tower. I did go back the last stream that I was playing Raft. I made a little gangplank so that I could step aboard the radio tower. There's our friendly shark. So we were there last stream, and I got to pick up all of the notes from the radio tower so we can begin the story of the game. And I was looking over the notes. I did find some, I was looking at them from a different game that I'm playing. I'm a little bit further ahead in my personal game. I did find some language, some foul language in the notes. So for anyone who's watching the stream here, that's going to be on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and go through the story as it stands. I will not be reading the language audibly, but if there's someone who doesn't want to see the language, then maybe you could play a game, or maybe now would be your time to skip forward in the VOD, or if you happen to be watching live, then now would be the time to take a few minutes break while I go over the notes, or just find something else to do. And you can listen. I'll be reading the story so far. So let's see. That would be the T key here. Here's my notes. I did not mention about the instructions we get. Oh, and I'm going to take off this. Tell you what, I'm going to take off this bird head. I think I was playing Raft last around close to Halloween time, so that was my costume. And thank you, Patrick, for getting me that costume. Let's see. I'll put that away, and then we'll open up the notes. First, the instructions that I have been following, even though this is the first I've read them. You are a forward scout. Your raft is your home. Your hook is your friend. If your raft breaks, you patch it up. If your hook is lost, you make another. If you find the big blue stretching out forever, that means you aren't paying attention. So I don't know if that note implies that I should always be seeing something on the horizon. I guess there's enough horizon. I should be able to find something, but even that radio tower appears to be gone for now, so I'm not sure. Certainly, things come up every so often. There's either abandoned rafts or there are other islands that show up with pretty frequent regularity. And then there's all this trash too, so that definitely varies the Big Blue landscape. There's nothing you can't make if you have the right salvage, which apparently is junk, is the right salvage. Follow any radio frequencies. If it's still broadcasting, it's above water. So the radio tower was at this frequency, 9614, and we got a note with a new frequency. So maybe I better set that up before too long. I'll finish this page. Others have come before you. More will come after you. Be sure to mark the way. I don't know what marking the way refers to. The world is gone, but its stories remain. Gather as many as you can. And for Pete's sake, watch out for sharks. Okay. Let me go ahead and check the frequencies. Got a letter here. Let's see. So I have a battery and that is getting pretty low. I'll need to check and see if I have a replacement for that. There we go. There's how we turn it on. And I have the wrong number for now. So I want 6533. 6, 5, 3, 3. There we go. So that is my target. That is the one I just left. And let's see. Do I have a streamer? I think I did set up a streamer at some point. I'm going to turn this off because I do not have magical electricity charging towers. There's my streamer. So that is actually blowing. Okay, no. It is blowing us in the general direction of where we want to go. And Patrick, I don't know if you're still listening, but I've decided that I'm going to try to use the items that I would currently have. So I think I've just earned the headlamp that you got me. I'm not going to try the engine so far because I think I would get that later. So we're not going to make really fast progress, but we'll make progress, and thankfully we're sailing in approximately the correct direction. Okay. Let me check and see if I need to replace any of these batteries, or that battery. Okay, I do not see batteries in that inventory. So when I come across a little island, I will be trying to collect the goods for that. Oh, that shark. I'm not sure I'll make it. Okay. Well, this raft will need to become more manageable in size anyway. Okay. Then let's go ahead and have a look at the story so far. So these were the notes that we got from the radio tower. We do not have any notes from the next location, obviously, because we're not there. So this is radio tower notes. So December 12th. 2 months we have been working on these reactors. 2 months working to save the world and with no one to tell our story to. Our names aren't important. They gave us all nicknames after that foreman leaked everything about the North Pole testing project. As if that made a difference. As if any of us can make a difference at all at this point. Sparrow had been wary since the initial pitch, especially over the details that had been glossed over. Apparently the prototype is nowhere near stable. There was no mention of what happened to the Chinese team that came before us. Ren was supposed to be one of them, but he's not letting anything show. Owl mumbled something about the emergency cooling system looking shoddy, which wasn't the half of it. But I knew better than to rattle on about it. I mean, they gave us someplace dry to work on. Those are in short supply. So the next, I've got a note about where I might possibly find people. And then in January, there's a diary entry. I wish I knew where we were, that we had some place we could point to except that radio tower out in the distance. So apparently this note was not written at the radio tower. 12, 16, and 8 failed today after 3 days of testing. 16's core burned so hard and fast it ate right through the wet well. Its payload sank into the ocean hot enough to burn for 100 years. So sounds like radioactivity. Sparrow checked the radiation levels. What's being let out with every test. They said they're going to use those in shelters. We can fix this, she said. And the craziest part is we agreed. Us 4 overworked, exhausted pencil necks. We would save the world. What would be left of it anyway? So then February, question mark. So I'm curious about that. Turns out Ren blew the whistle on us and made the people in charge mad. They must have known we were stalling, working on 12 and 24. Those things let out so much radiation they burned green. Except they took them anyway. Sure, Owl and I put up a fight, but they just shoved us around, that bunch of jocks. Took Sparrow and Reactor 8 with them too. After all, Ren knew she was the only one with the smarts to keep them working. They left us behind on the reactor testing platform, then blew the foundations. The water's been rising slowly. Owl thinks we should go after them. I wish I didn't agree with him, so it sounds like they were betrayed. So if you can understand what you are reading, this isn't the end. We gunned the engine as hard and as fast as we could, but I think it burned out. We barely made it to the radio tower. Owl said the boat's useless, but I can fix it. They're probably way ahead of us, but I think they're headed for Selene. So that's probably a name to keep in mind. I just want to leave this someplace anyone might find it. We didn't cause this, but we helped it along. And we're going to try to fix this. We're going to get there, and we're going to shut down 12 and 24, and we're going to get Sparrow back. And then maybe I will ask her out, and she won't look at me like I'm crazy this time. All found my notepad, but I got it back. I need to hide it better this time. This marker makes it really hard to erase stuff, but we will get her back. We have to. Cuckoo. Makes me wonder if Owl wrote the caps or if that was Cuckoo. Maybe that was plausible deniability. Trace. 8th of January, distress call received. Trace. 9th of January, established rapport, language unknown, Malay, get Tarragon. 2nd of February, comm dead, gunshots in distance, Tangaroa. 4th of February, somebody speaking Malay, too fast to make out. Oh, I am getting thirsty. I can't finish this note. Thankfully, I do have a good supply of fresh water. Let's go ahead and stock that up. Okay. I don't have my bow out. I can repair that maybe. I'll pull my bow out and then I've got to see where I left my hammer because I'm pretty sure I should have one. There it is. We'll repair that. Yeah, we've got the main raft pretty well fortified, so that's nice. If this section does get eaten up, it won't be too bad. Thank you for your help on that, Patrick. And it looks like we have an island. That is not our destination, I imagine. It's in the correct direction. Yeah, we've got plenty of time before we reach our destination, but I need to get battery parts. So, let's see. There we go. That should set our course toward the island, which looks pretty large. I'm trying to figure out if there will be dangerous animals on it. I think if it were large, it would show up on the radar, so this is probably safe. I'm just checking up here to see if I have... Oh, a battery! Look at that! I don't need to make a new one. Do I need any other things I can harvest? I've got some scrap, some sand. I've got plenty of ocean resources, so I shouldn't need to get into the water. Get a little more scrap. Got a bunch of clay bricks, so I won't need the sand or the... Well, I might... I don't know. Got some seaweed. Got a little metal. And got some copper. So I'll just top off on those supplies. I think I'll sleep the night away. And then I'll have to fight off the shark real quick. I've got all my resources for that. I do have a good supply of arrows. That was one thing I was concerned about for the next location. Oh, I've got plenty of arrows. No delay there. Okay. So, we'll nap. Fight a shark. Okay. Where did that fella go? And then I'll continue reading notes after. I think there was like one note that I was halfway through. I'll finish that after we clear this out. Okay. Once you get above the water level, it's a little hard to keep an eye on this fellow. Okay. And sometimes I'm not exactly great with the timing. I think I've gotten better. Especially the metal spear. Okay, there we go. The metal spear, it's easier to get the correct timing for when to attack him back. Oh, I've got plenty of scrap, so I won't need that. I just noticed in the bottom of my screen there. I can put that away. And then I'll see what else is around here. I have a hook. Well, first I was going to finish up the notes I was reading. Okay, so 8th of January, distress call received, trace. 9th of January, established rapport, language unknown, Malay, get Terrigan. 2nd of February, calm dead, gunshots in distance, Tangaroa. 4th of February, someone speaking Malay, too fast to make out, Kota Jankar. 6th of March, Terrigan found dry place, leaving, water's rising, and we're short a couple places. I am sorry. 8th of March, Mike, if you are reading this, head for Balboa, if it's still above water. There are supplies in the pantry. Okay. So then, let me get out of that. That should be all the notes we have so far. Good to know. So I'll top off my island supplies, and then we'll head on to the next location. I don't have to worry about getting enough arrows, so we can just dive straight in there. Waves are getting a little choppy. I got enough metal for now. Let's see if there's copper. I think this is one of the islands that has copper. And I didn't need to pick up scrap, so I'm going to avoid getting those. And the clay will be useful for making bowls if I get a cook set together, so... This is where I'll find the copper, but first I want to make sure I take a good breath. Okay, is there anything else back here? I think there's usually a chest back here. Yep. So I've got a recipe. Bolts, planks, nails. Have enough planks. Is there anything I want to drop? I can drop the plastic because we've got so much stuff in the nets. I'm sure that will replace it. Nothing in there. And there's usually a point where I start to feel a little bit of anxiety about the shark coming back. That would be now. But I think I'm a bit early. I'll try not to worry too much. Because I think it was kind of morning-ish. It wasn't like dawn when I killed him. I think it was during the morning, so I wouldn't expect him until afternoon. But I am trying to be aware. So if you see these streams and the way I'm looking around winds up being nauseating, let me know, because I'm not sure how my playstyle winds up affecting people in stream. Got some extra metal for some reason. And I think... Oh, I've got some extra scrap. Also, I put my scrap over here. I think I can leave here. I don't think there's any seaweed. I'll have a peek. I did see some extra sand. So I'll pick that up. Yeah, there it is. So lately, as I've been, I had some time off from work this week, and I took some time off for the Thanksgiving holiday from the stream. So I've been having a lot of good vacation time, but I've used some of that trying to edit some of the old streams into video content that I can put on the channel, where some of what I feel is more valuable is up rather than a 3-hour video where you don't quite know what you're getting. I think I'll be done here, so I'll go ahead and shove off. We'll raise anchor. And see how the raft finds its way around this island, huh? There we go. It'll work out. Egg. That's okay, Patrick. If you're busy doing other stuff, I don't mind. I'm grateful for when you do remember the stream, so you're doing fine. Thank you for all the stuff that you provided. It makes the stream, makes the game function a lot smoother. Can I join? I won't use cheat. I'm thinking not today, because I do want to progress in the story, and I just do want to be careful. So today I'll be playing the game on my own. I was actually trying to there was something I wanted to talk about and think over. Maybe you can help me think things through. Because like I was saying, I had edited some... I was working on editing some content, and a while back when I was first running the channel, I had a series of streams where I was thinking through something that was bothering me, and it's kind of come back. It's bothering me again, and I've got to think it through again how I want to handle it. Kind of the thing. In fact, when it happened the first time, I was playing Raft. That was the first time I was playing Raft on the stream. And I knew that the game Raft has some language in it. Now, the language that I was expecting wasn't there when I actually got to the radio tower. They had changed out the message on that, so that was interesting to me, because there is language in the notes that I just read. So that was... I think it's interesting that they changed the language in one place, but they kept language in other places on the game. Let's see if I can get that crate. I'm trying to think through how I want, what kind of game content I want to keep. I'm going to hope that I was able to fill in any blanks with anything I didn't already have, or fill in the spaces that I have here. I'm going to hope that none of that's important, because I didn't plan ahead, but that's fine. We'll raise that. We'll go to the next location. Oh, and there's another abandoned raft that way, so let's try for that. So when I was first playing Raft, the very first time, there's an island out there, but I'm not going to try to hit the island also. And unless, let me check my my settings. Okay, so our destination is actually over that way. I'm not going to try to hit the abandoned raft. I want to see if I can make it to our destination. I'm not sure how well I'll do because the wind is kind of acting against me here. Maybe once the sun sets, I'll go to sleep and maybe that'll reset the wind heading. So we'll see. I forgot how to swim at the speed of light. Well, it's not too big of a handicap coming from one who doesn't swim at the speed of light. So, when I was first playing the game, I was thinking about the language in the game, and that was a kind of conflict for me because I don't like language, as you know. And yet I play computer games that have language in them, and I've said it comes from me wanting to write stories at one point. I wanted to know about the kinds of stories that other people were writing, the things that other people were talking about. And I still like to know the ideas that are being shared in those stories. So often oh, battery empty. Okay. Now I think I can build this into a headlamp. Not that I need one, but I can recycle batteries that way. So I might do that. Let me put that down. I don't think I need that glass. And there's that battery. And I'll trade... Oh, the other battery was up here. And then I'll probably want to make a replacement for that one. I've got plenty of copper and seaweed, so I think I'll be fine with that one. Okay. What happens to the wind direction if I go to sleep here? I get hungry, that's what happens. Let's see. So I often use wanting to see the ideas that are in stories as kind of my reason for playing games that have language in them, even though I don't like foul language and wish it wasn't in the games. But trying to figure out how to present them on the streams is what's on my mind now. And I realize some people, Patrick, I know you said you're like this. I had my arrow. I probably would have gotten through that faster, but oh well. Some people don't mind the language. Definitely I am aware of people like myself who do mind that kind of thing. And so if part of my audience, let's see, why am I stuck? So this streamer is wedging me up against the island. I guess I'll have to see if I can turn this around. Will that unstick me? Yeah, pretty well. There we go. If there's people in my audience who don't care for language, which I think there may be because I'm a Christian, and often us Christians like to see the kind of content that other Christians are making. Let's see. So now it's turning around that way. And the streamer is going that way. I think we're going to be heading in the proper direction. Roughly. Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought my numbers had changed. A lot of the times I think viewers who don't like the language will have their own moral reasons for that. I know sometimes it affects how I think when I get exposed to a lot of language. Kind of like when you see a movie. You may go into a movie pretty chill, but if it's an action film, then once the hero has beat up all the bad guys and has emerged victorious, then you've got all this adrenaline you've got to figure out what to do with after the movie is over. Kind of in the same way, I recognize that I can be influenced by the content I take in, and whether that content has foul language, that kind of thing. And that's something that I may be okay with for my own reasons dealing with, but for someone else watching my stream hoping to see a Christian talk about things that they agree with, then they get exposed to the language that they're trying to avoid. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to think through, is in a game like Raft, where it has that language, how do I want to approach it? So far what I've done is, when I'm aware there's going to be language, and I knew there would be language in the game that I was playing today because I would be going over those notes, then I have decided I'm going to put it in the title that that there's that risk, which helps a little bit. But let's say I'm not aware that there's going to be language and I'm playing the game, and someone who is very careful about the kinds of things they take in joins the stream and thinks, oh, this game looks very fun. I like how Raft looks, and I'd like to fight a shark, and I'd like to sail a raft through the oceans. And so maybe there's no language at all during the stream when I'm playing it, when this person sees it, and then they buy the game, and then they discover that they bought something with language when they were trying to avoid that. So, okay, is there any way that I could help someone avoid that? I do like the idea of looking at the ideas that the game has. So, for instance, I think there's this game has a message about ecology, about climate change. There's all this junk in the ocean. We're trying to figure out why the ocean is so high. What is the reason for that? I see that egg, Patrick. And Patrick, I realize I'm talking a lot, and this may be something that you don't care about. We are now in the section of the stream where I'm playing the game. There's that shark again. Let me see if I can hit him. Okay, good. That was enough. So if you have something you care about talking about, if there's something that you think would be more interesting to talk about and you want to have a conversation, then definitely I am willing to change subjects. That's what this section of the stream is about. That's the other thing that I was thinking about, though, is we've had this conversation before. I've talked to you about this before. I'm discovering that I really don't care about games. They're fun. I enjoy playing them. This is a fun game. But it doesn't really have a lot of meaning to me. Like I was saying, this game, you're saying I need to know, so go ahead. I'll keep talking, but if you go ahead and keep typing, then did the egg or the chicken come first? Okay. Well, I'm going to take you seriously, okay? So, serious question, did the egg or the chicken come first? The chicken came first. Now, I'm curious what your context is, but the serious answer is the chicken came first. So, do I continue the topic that I was talking on, or do you tell me what it is you're wondering about, which one came first? Okay, so I just broke the hook. That's fine. Now, that is a serious question, Patrick, actually. I think it actually, Christians are going to have a different answer to that question than a lot of people who live in our society, especially people who believe in evolution. So someone like me who believes that God designed the world is going to say that the chicken came first. Someone who believes that birds evolved from dinosaurs is going to say that the egg came first, right? So that's where that comes from. That's why I speak with that kind of confidence, is because the Bible says that God created the birds before the animals. It says that God created the birds on the same day as the fish. And we know fish lay eggs, so that's why I'm bringing that up. We know that God created Adam and Eve, and from what we can tell, it sounds like they were adults. So it seems like God created the animals and the birds and the fish as adults, and then their offspring would have come later. I like chicken and egg and wanted to know what came first. So now you've got the full story. You've got both the Christian side and the evolutionary side. So I was saying I don't find, and Patrick, again, if you have anything else you want to talk about, or if you want to continue that topic, feel free to type it in the chat. I'm definitely much more relaxed about what we're talking about at this stage than, say, when I've got a Bible section to go through. I would say when I'm talking about the Bible stuff, I'm still open to talking about beliefs that people care about, religious stuff or politics or like the meaning of things. That doesn't seem to be the kind of thing you talk about. Can we play the game after stream? Well, I'm playing pretty late into the evening, so these days I'm thinking I'm going to be too tired after the stream to play the game. I'm trying to think through. I'm not sure I'll be playing any games for the next stream because I wanted to start responding to videos that I find on the internet. So I think next stream I'm going to respond to a video I saw after I do the Bible section. And then once I'm through with that, maybe I can talk, but I don't think I'll be playing a game because that would keep me long. We might be able to decide whether we want to play Minecraft or I'm trying to think through with Raft because this might be one thing where you can help me sort it out. Because you're my most regular viewer. You saw the Raft stream. Would you prefer I continue the story part of Raft on this Raft, which has a lot of the stuff you gave me, a lot of the stuff you set up for me? And then maybe you and I could play a different Raft version. We could play a different Raft world. Oh, what's that? I think that might be my destination. Yeah, that's it. I can't get my bow ready. There we go. So I could either continue the story on this one and you and I could play on a separate one if we've agreed to get together and play, or we could go ahead and play on this one, and then I could restart the story on the other one so that we can see how much I do without any cheats, how well I go without any cheats. So that may be something that you can help me figure out what you would rather see. Would you rather see me continue on with the items that we have, and you and I would play on this one? Would you rather see the story on this one, or would you rather you and I play on this one in a future stream? Yeah, that is definitely where I'm heading. By the way, the battery is still infinite. I took a battery out of here. Hold on. This one is... I haven't been using this one, so I'm not sure if that's wearing off. I took a battery out of there and it was empty. This is the empty battery that I took out. I don't know if I had another battery around. I think I looked through here for a battery before. So I don't know if that battery became part of a headlamp or something. I don't think I've made any headlamps. So I don't know what happened to the infinite battery. I remember giving you a battery when I was using cheats. I do remember that, and I do remember that battery was infinite. Okay, let me get some water. And apparently I need to top off that water. I wish I could drink the rain. I think I remember... Well, no. I might be thinking wrong, because I remember having a battery, and it looked like it was dying, and then you picked it up and you charged it. But that was probably when you applied the infinite cheat to the battery, right? So that would have made that battery infinite, like you're saying. I'm not sure what happened to that one. So I'm still trying to work out, were you wanting to see me continue the story on this world, or were you wanting to play this world together and then I would do the story on a different one? I saw you said this one, but I think when I left it stopped being infinite. Either that, or I decided to try to play the game with a non-cheat battery. I'm not sure. I'm thinking I'll go ahead and continue the story with this one, because we're here, and I don't know that I want to board the ship yet. So we're here at this island. We're at our location. I'll go ahead and weigh anchor. Is that what you call it when you let it down? Drop anchor. So we're here. I will not go on the ship today, I think, because it is getting late. So that could be the next Raft stream that I do. Next week, I won't be playing a game because I'll take time to respond to a video. And then after the video, I'll be able to chat and talk about whatever viewers are there at the time, what they want to talk about or what I want to talk about. So that will be our low-key chat after I respond to the video and after I talk about the story that we just had, Sodom and Gomorrah. I want to kind of continue about that. And then I'll probably continue playing into the future. But what I was saying, I think this is a good stopping point. I'll interrupt myself one more time. This is a good stopping point. I think I'll go ahead and pull out of the game, and then I'll talk in full screen chat here. Full screen camera. So we'll save this. This will be our story world, and then you and I can do a together a multiplayer world. Okay, and let me go ahead and go to full screen. I'll pull up some music. Got to get that app started again. There we go. And get that out of the way. Is that a big boat? That is like a cruise ship or something. So it looks like it's structured like a cruise ship. I'm not sure exactly how it fits into the story. Just like with the radio tower, I read through all the notes. Apparently something involving radioactivity and technology. But I can't figure out what the story is yet. When I started this stream, in my own private world, I had gotten as far as the cruise ship, but I had not gotten past it. Since I started streaming Raft, in my own private world, I have gotten past the cruise ship. I have not found the island that's after that. So, once we beat the cruise ship, the next time that I come into the game on Raft, then that's when we'll be beyond anything that I'm familiar with. So like I was saying though, I'm finding an issue. Raft is probably one of the easiest games for me to play of the ones that we're playing so far. I like Raft. I like Subnautica. I'm kind of getting tired of Minecraft and My Time at Portia, so I continue to play those. I don't really have an issue with those, but those are the ones that are the less appealing to me. And part of what I'm trying to think through, Minecraft is the game that's probably, Minecraft and My Time at Portia are probably actually the more family-friendly games. I don't think there will be any swearing with those. Raft and Subnautica, the ones I'm actually enjoying, happen to be the ones that have the swearing. So that's unfortunate. And then I've been asking myself, what's the value of playing the games at all? Because I have to think of something important to talk about like I'm doing now. About how I feel about those games and about what conflicts I have with those games. When I would rather be talking about, say, what matters to you, the viewer. Patrick, you're the one I'm seeing here today, but don't know if there's anyone else who would join chat in now or in the future. So I would like this channel to be one where we're discussing ideas, that kind of thing. And then if I'm focused on video games, which I may or may not agree with to get my ideas from, am I going to be critical of video games? So that's what I'm thinking through. Like I'm saying, I want to respond to the video next week. I think I'm going to aim towards responding to videos when I can. That doesn't mean I won't play games, so maybe next week we'll do the video, and then the week afterward, I think I'm planning on Subnautica. And then the one after that would be Minecraft, which I'm still okay to do. We'll see if I find any other videos to respond to. So, going to lean toward things that we can talk about that are meaningful, and definitely if you have something that's meaningful to you, especially after I get done with the Bible section, then I'm open to talking about those too. So it doesn't have to be all me. I'm open to hearing about other people's points of view. But so far, I'm running the stream, and so I have been carrying the show. So trying to figure out what the best way for me to do that would be. That's what I've been thinking through. Patrick, since you're the one who has been in chat so far, and since you're the return viewer very often, I would appreciate if you've got any input. I know you don't tend to give your opinion on how I run the stream. I'm curious if you have a reaction to this, or if you have any feelings about what you think a good direction for the stream would be, if you have an opinion. So I think I'll take a drink here and stay on for another minute or so, but I'm about ready to wrap up for the evening. It is my time. It is 10 o'clock, 10, 11, that kind of time. Okay, so I'm seeing the word yes. Is that a yes in any particular direction, or are you just agreeing with wherever I go with the channel? Yes, you have an opinion. Yes, you don't have an opinion. Yes. Okay. So I take it that's final. So I appreciate you being here, Patrick. I appreciate you sitting through the stream and listening. And thank you very much. I'll definitely let you know the next time I do a stream, which I'm planning to be next week. So I'll send you a message in Discord to let you know when it is within an hour from the time that I will be setting up the stream. So I'll talk to you then. And I'll go ahead and call it quits for today. So, Patrick, God bless you. Anybody else who might be on, God bless you. And play kind. There is one... I want to make sure that I slow this down in steps here. So, a little bit of an awkward quit. Sorry about that. Egg. I see that. Awkward quit. I've got egg on my face.